Hello, you're watching Cardiff News. A call was made for a public inquiry into a tragedy in the 70s and 80s where people were given contaminated blood. 173 people in Wales were affected. Overall, 5,000 people contracted diseases including HIV, hepatitis and the human version of mad cow disease, VCJD. The blood plasma was given from an unregulated company where blood was donated from drug users, prostitutes and prisoners. But now AMs are calling for action.
He felt like he was a murderer. He felt like he had something inside him that he could kill people with.
These are the heartbreaking words of just one of the hundreds of people in Wales whose lives were ripped apart by the contaminated blood scandal. And 40 years on, they're still fighting for the truth. Sue, whose identity we have protected, lost her husband to HIV and hepatitis C in 1990. And more than a quarter of a century later, she says the pain of waiting for answers has never left her side.
We walked out to the hospital that day and my husband, he would never go back. He would have bad bleeds because of haemophilia, but he wouldn't go back. He was petrified. He felt like he was a murderer. He felt like he had something inside him that he could kill people with. Not knowing. I mean, I've never found out exactly when he was infected, but it's got to have been at least a year or so before. And he could have infected umpteen people through just cutting himself or whatever. He just felt like he was a murderer and he had the power inside him to kill people, and not having the contact with the hospital or anything like that. It killed us inside, and it still kills me inside now. And it's 27 years nearly that he's passed away. And we've got to do things like this to get this inquiry and get the proper compensation and money sorted out that we need. But every time we do something like this, it just kills you inside. It really does hurt.
Sadly, Sue's story isn't unique. Her husband was one of 70 people who died after being infected with contaminated blood in Wales. Nearly 5,000 people were infected across the UK, 280 of them here, after the blood was imported from the Americas over several years. Ever since the outbreak, countless calls for a public inquiry have been dismissed by successive UK governments. But now a group of people whose lives were ruined by the outbreak have taken their fight for justice to the Senedd. And Julie Morgan, who chairs a cross-party group on the issue, feels it's a step in the right direction.
It's a big milestone for us in Wales because we had absolute agreement, nobody objected, all the political parties supported it. And since I've been an Assembly member, it's the first time that we've heard those powerful testimonies and people spoke so strongly and so emotionally and told those stories that I think it had a big effect on everybody who was in the chamber. Obviously, the decisions are not in our hands, they're in the hands of the Westminster Government. But what we will do is convey to the Westminster Government our strength of feeling that there should be a full public inquiry, because I don't think this will ever go away until that happens.
Compensation was handed out to those affected in the aftermath, but many of the people here feel it's an insult which is used to hide the truth. One man who has taken his fight for justice to the Welsh Government is Tony. His son contracted HIV and died in 2008. He was just 44.
We watched a young man growing and becoming successful qualifying as an architect, only to see his life devastated by being told because of the contaminated blood he was now HIV, then hepatitis, and then other issues as well. It was a result of all that, and watching his health deteriorate. And there can be nothing worse than sitting along the bedside and watching your son disappear from your life. And that's really is heartbreaking. In the early years, compensation was handed out. How they measured that, nobody ever quite knew, because it was varying for most people. Some of the compensation was quite reasonable at the time, but when you compare what was paid out in other countries, especially Southern Ireland, which were extremely large sums of money, which really were in line with possibly what their future prospects were and their earning power as individuals. And now the money that's being offered now is derisory.
In a statement, the Department of Health said the department is more than doubling its annual spend on the scheme for people affected by this tragedy so that we can provide an annual payment to all infected individuals for the first time. But it's not money these families want, it's answers. And until the government agree to a public inquiry, they say they can never let go of their pain. Daniel Wilson for Cardiff News.